a little bit of a dance, so it's always hard to do the last session, and I always wonder whether the hardest part is the session before lunch, session after lunch, or the last session of the conference. So I have done the previous two. They did not involve dancing before, but let's see how we get on. If I feel or see that you're falling asleep, we will have to do a group dance that we have invented last night. For the online audience, we will have to record it at some point and post it on our YouTube channel, where all the videos will be made available, so that everyone can do a SupplierPlus dance afterwards. And today we are joined by people from different, what I like about the panel, that everyone is different. Everyone have their own product or solution or knowledge, and they are not all from the same place. And we have heard a lot about magic. So we've heard about auto magic, about mathemagic, quantum computers. I think they have magic in their own, so they don't need to be magical. We have also heard about sticky paper and changing the mindset. We have heard about 5,000 data points and data point interactions, and where can we find a system that can process it and make sure that all the data points are correct. So let's like this. We will try to unpack quite a few things from the 2 days of discussions. And to start with, I would like to ask my panelists to introduce themselves. And maybe we start with Sirli. Over to you. Please, those of us who have not heard you speak yesterday, who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you for having me here. And unfortunately, today as well, I cannot be there with you physically, only virtually due to some health concerns. But hello, everyone. I am Sirli Heinsoo, Head of Real-Time Economy in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications in Estonia. And we are working with the concept building since 2019. The concept actually was born in Finland, but we have taken this initiative really on board in Estonia and have developed it further together with Nordic and Baltic countries.
Thank you so much. And now the gentleman on stage, maybe we start with Joao.
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Joao. I'm one of the co-founders of EID Easy. So what we do is we want to bring and democratize the usage of qualified electronic signatures. Pretty much, as Oscar was saying, we just take a slightly different path, which is we want to plug in existing methods that are already deployed throughout the world. In that sense, we aggregate different QTSPs, different qualified trust service providers, into one single application, and therefore reduce the cost of adoption. And we also make the onboarding of users a lot easier, because these are methods that people already have in their pockets or in their computers, or that they've already used it for a long time. So we don't try to invent something new. We try to make use of something that people already have in different countries.
Okay, thank you so much. And Axel?
Thank you. So I'm Axel Baudry, business development representative at Guardtime. So for those who are not aware of what Guardtime is a deep tech company specialized in data integrity. And at Guardtime, we created the KSI blockchain, which is used by private and public clients, such as SupplierPlus or the Estonian government, Dutch government, NATO, or Lockheed Martin in the US.
Good. And Toomas?
Yes, hello. My name is Toomas, and I am Cto of Telema. And about myself, I started to learn computer science in high school, middle of nowhere, year 78. In Telema, I started this company from scratch 2000. First 5 years as general manager and now CTO. About Telema. Telema is EDI and e-invoicing operator, or how Gartner Group says, communication service provider. And we are active, or our focus is first of all in Baltic states, and second, we are focused on fast-moving consumer goods. And a few figures also about our company today, or today, last year. Last year we transferred or we did 22 million transactions. There was 73 connections or links between business units. We have more than 1,000 machine-to-machine channels to different parties. They are suppliers, retailers, free PL, logistics, banks for factoring. We are transferring or processing about 20 doc types and converting information one syntax to another, any to any actually. And also we calculated savings for our clients. And during last year, our clients altogether saved 100 million euros operational cost. That is where we are right now.
Good. So very good figures. Yes, and you can clap for so much saving for the clients. Over the last day and today, we were talking about challenges. So to start with, I would like to say that we have a task. So those of you online and in the audience, please do, if you haven't yet done, please use the task part in a workshop environment in the platform. For those of you online, you will find it next to our session. Should be on the right-hand side of your screen. I would like you to put a word. What challenges do you see for transaction identification in the digital world? Please use one word, but as I tested it yesterday, you can do it multiple times. So if you have more than one word, you can do it 1, 2, 3, anytime. We will keep it open during the first round of discussion, and then we will ask our superb technical team to bring it up a bit later so we can see if there are any other topics that we could pick up. But to start with, I would like to frame the discussion into the 3 main challenges. And I think that you will agree, I hope, and the audience as well, that what we have seen so far is the first challenge is the legislation and regulation. So for the uptake of technologies, specifically for cross-border transactions, and where supply chain finance requires scale and international relations, legislative base can be a challenge for the adoption of technologies. We also discussed, and I would like you to discuss now, the technical challenges as to how easy it is to adapt to these technologies. What experience have you had in Estonia, in the region, or in other countries? And the third part is standardization. And this is something that is important, and we have heard a lot also yesterday about it, that so far in Estonia, I understand there is an e-invoice standard in Estonia, but maybe not yet available outside of that. So, Toomas, I would like to come to you, and you mentioned that your experience mostly is in the retail sector, and also maybe with a link to the panel that we had before lunch on the retail business and supply chain finance. What experience have you had in Telema in terms of the adoption of technologies of e-invoicing and so on?
Yeah, I will start from history a little bit. And actually, EDI is starting from 1965 when it was in USA, 2 railway companies connected 2 computers to exchange business information through telephone lines. And 4 years later, internet was established, or 2 first computers were connected to internet. What's more happens after year 65? Few flights to moon, internet was invented, microprocessor was invented, PC, Ethernet, Wi-Fi. Now, 57 years later, what we don't have? We don't have e-invoicing standard, what is commodity. What is my conclusion is that flight to moon is much easier to organize and describe business information, virtual world. what it means that on the market there is a huge amount of different standards. And even if two companies using same standards, the way how they are using these standards is not the same. So that we can't compare Edifact invoice from Siemens or Coca-Cola. They are different. Standard technically is same. And this is a reality where we are right now. When we are starting a new business integration, it is that everybody has own requirements for communication. So there is a different communication channel, there is different syntax for message. But this is the easy part. The most complicated is that the supply chain is like a puzzle. So it's a lot of bits. But problem is that the bits will not fit together. And the business process simply don't match to each other. And this is where we are somehow this glue or intermediate who are trying to match these business processes together. What else? And usually shows that the technical side integration in IT departments, it takes few days maybe. But agree what the information should be transferred, it takes 2 months. So the technical stuff nowadays is simple and easy. And in our side also to connect a new partner, it takes maybe a few hours to configure, that's it. But then testing and testing and testing.
And Toomas, you mentioned glue. I'm just thinking, how would it relate to the sticky paper? So if you say that you need a lot of glue to connect it, that's why maybe paper is so sticky, because it's being connected with the glue somehow, and you get bits of paper in one system, which gets then scanned and used, and in others not.
Yeah, what is interesting trend maybe is that this European e-invoicing standard, what is, it's not technical standard, it's semantical model, and this is independent from technology. And you can code this information in different technical standards. But it's just invoice. And when I thought this seminar interesting, we're talking here only about invoice, but for example, supply chain, or where there's a goods flow and documents describing goods, we have much more documents. And now there's a question. Supplier who's supplying goods, why he must adopt European e-invoice? Because it's not covering ordering, delivery, receiver advice, and so.
And how does it work? So if you, because you mentioned to me when we were discussing about Telema that you are present in different countries. When you have your technology being used cross-border,
Yes.
what challenges do you face on top of what you have just described?
The biggest challenge is motivation.
Okay.
All parties who participating in this delivery process should be motivated to implement something. And if one party is not motivated, then it's very, very hard to do some integration.
Okay.
But if there is motivation, everything can be done very, very quickly.
That's good. So I will make a note. We can come back to motivation. But Axel, at Guardtime and at SupplierPlus, we're using your timestamping solution for our logs. Tell us more about it, about your experience of offering this service, and how can it be applied to supply chain finance, and specifically any challenges that you have faced and how you overcome them for cross-border transactions.
All right, I will try to keep it short because I see some tired faces after those 2 days of conference. Well, first I would like to say that it was very interesting for me as a representative of Guardtime. We also saw that Lucas Silves was talking about blockchain and Web3 for public sector. So it's something that we are very interested in at Guardtime. But he also mentioned quite many challenges, and those challenges actually were recurrent over the 2 days of conference. So the first one is that data flows are skyrocketing, and at some point we might face scalability issues. The second point is that global value chains and global supply chains are growing. So it means that more and more stakeholders are involved, and at some point we might face responsibilities issues. Also, as Toomas explained, the legal framework is increasing, and it becomes increasingly difficult for the companies to comply with the laws. And the last point is that we are living in a different world, unfortunately, from the one we were living in February. We are living in a world where trust is very important, and cybersecurity is a top priority. Lucas Silves also said that, well, we have many challenges, we have many risks, but those risks could become opportunities. And Oscar from Lever ID said, yeah, in the current world, we should not focus on trust, we should actually aim for truth, mathematical truth. And that would have probably helped Sean, who went to Morocco and who needed to do dozens of stamps and signatures for his flight tickets. And he also said something else. He said that technology is so exciting. And at Guardtime, we do agree with that. We actually believe that technology can allow us to make the world's information universally reliable. And how do we do that? So at Guardtime, we created the KSI blockchain. And this blockchain, which is used by SupplierPlus, is providing a timestamping service. So for those who are not aware of what timestamp is, a timestamp is a small piece of digital data which binds another digital data to a date and to a time. So this timestamp is a proof that this digital data actually existed at this particular time. Well, KSI blockchain is used by the clients. So the clients are actually creating documents, modifying them, deleting them. And every time this action is done, a hash is created. And KSI blockchain will collect all the hashes and will store them. So it means that the data is not disclosed, only the hashes are collected, and we can have a full chronology of the events. Also, this technology is, the hash is very light, so KSI blockchain is scalable. And that's a response to one of the issues mentioned by Lucas Silves. And since these hashes are very light, KSI blockchain is also very energy efficient. So, well, we are living in a world where global warming is becoming and is a crucial issue. So I think we should aim for this type of technology. Lastly, KSI blockchain is eIDAS compliant. And Guardtime is considered and registered as qualified trust service provider. So it means that all over the EU, the timestamp will be assumed to be accurate in front of a court. And, well, those timestamps will be considered by the judges as accurate beyond reasonable doubts. So, yeah, timestamping can be very interesting for financial supply chains because timestamping is horizontally valuable across industries. So we can use it for supply chains because it will improve the transparency for the products. It's important for e-invoicement because it can avoid non-payment litigation. It's also very important for e-commerce because it can improve trust between parties. But coupled with audit logs, it can also help the companies to be more monitoring their system. So it can help them to fit with the accountability requirements. And well, for those who are not aware, accountability is a set of rules, so GDPR, for example, and technical means. And timestamp could actually help the GDPR rules. For example, GDPR provides you the right to be forgotten. Well, if one of your clients will come to you and asks for you to erase his data, well, how can this client be sure that you actually erase the data? When you use a timestamp technology, you can actually provide a proof that you erased the data. So this technology, the timestamp technology, combined with audit log, can actually protect you from all the legal disputes, because, well, audit logs are usable in court, but those audit logs can also be challenged by the other attorney. And combined with KSI blockchain, for example, with the mathematical truth, well, it's much more difficult for the attorney to challenge the logs. And that's why at Guardtime we also created a new product which is called Truetrail. And this product actually combines both audit logs and timestamping. So it can allow the company to have a continuous monitoring of the current state, current digital state of the company, to monitor that every single log has been stamped by KSI blockchain, that no one intrude the system, no one created a data breach, or no one actually introduced the malware in the system. And if it happened, well, Truetrail will actually report that instantly, which is a huge improvement compared to the current software in the market, because currently, well, software will report this intrusion in 7 to 10 minutes.
I was listening to you, and I just want to do a little experiment. But before that, I want to ask you a question. So Toomas mentioned that one of the challenges that he encountered is motivation. So my assumption is when you say word blockchain, most probably you have a lot of motivation. Everyone, it's such a buzzword. But maybe let's do a little experiment before I ask you on the next question. So I will not, of course, ask you to raise your hand if you get excited with the word blockchain. I assume that all of you will. But we have people from different countries here. Raise your hand if you have experienced blockchain in any part of your life, whether it has been a service provider or your bank or anyone that where you knowingly know that a blockchain has been used.
It's quite a lot.
Oh, it's actually, yes, it's more than I thought. So for those of us, you who are online, it's quite a lot. Yes, it's interesting. But Axel, I have a question for you. When it comes to blockchain popularization and actually adoption of any technology, but for example, Guardtime, KSI, timestamping, how long do you think it will take for a case law to be developed where companies, where there may not be yet a regulation as such or a legislation in place, but there would be cases brought to court, for example, to challenge that something happened, and where audit logs can be used as evidence?
Right. Actually, we already see that some court cases are related to audit logs, and some attorneys, obviously, they try to challenge those audit logs. We didn't see yet some audit logs challenged when they were backed by timestamping, right? Well, I think the main issue with democratization of blockchain is that sometimes it's quite vague. To implement blockchain technology, you should have a meaningful use case, right? Because otherwise, well, you are just using a trend. And in some fields, it can be very complicated to implement that. But yeah, I gave some examples about e-invoicement, supply chain. And in general, you can pretty much always find a use case for your field, but sometimes it's not that relevant, right? But itself, if you actually have this use case, And for example, at Guardtime, we have the technology. It doesn't take that long to actually implement the blockchain for your use case. Well, at Guardtime, we try to make it personalized. We try to make partnership between the client and us in order to create a unique product. So it takes a bit more time.
Okay, good. So by listening to Axel, you may think that it's very easy, but let's go to Joao. You put easy in the name of your company.
Yes.
So is it because it's very easy what you do, or is it because you want people to believe that electronic IDs and qualified electronic signatures are easy?
No, I think we face the same challenge that Toomas was talking about before, that the actual technical implementation of our solution is easy. The technical implementation of what we do is a matter of hours. We have a single API. Most of our clients are document signing portals, so any DocuSign competitor could use our solution to start accepting qualified and advanced electronic signatures. So we're working with PandaDoc and Zoho Sign, and the integration technically is easy. I think the challenges that we see is, and the reason why these portals want to use our technology is that they are getting pressure from their clients, so everyday users, that if they sign documents in Europe, especially sensitive documents, they want to use qualified electronic signatures within the eIDAS framework. So they put pressure on the portals, why aren't you providing qualified electronic signatures? And then they turn to DocuSign, as we heard this morning, and then DocuSign tries to sell them with their own solution, which is expensive, cumbersome, has a long onboarding process of taking a picture, scanning, live agents, all of this according to eIDAS. And DocuSign is also now in the process of integrating some of the local methods that already exist, just like we do, right? So the clients have the need to sign these documents with qualified, and what we do is we take all the Baltic methods that SupplierPlus already has, so mobile ID, smart ID, but we also take things like in Sweden, we take bank ID. In Finland, we take the Finnish Trust Network. In Austria, we have Handy Signature. In Germany, we have D-Trust. Belgium, it's me. And then we have a couple of European-wide players like Zeal ID, Eurotrust, and potentially one day we can take Lever ID into our platform and integrate them as one of the methods that is accepted. And on the technical side, the integration is easy. So when it comes to the motivation, for the portals, the motivation is there because the clients are knocking on their doors like, why don't you have this? And as soon as they have a solution with our API, then they have an added advantage to provide it to them. So the adoption, we want to make it easy. And the reason we want to make it easy is because within the context of eIDAS, we want to popularize the adoption of qualified electronic signatures. I think it was Uwe was saying that whenever he pays, whenever you have a debt with your friend and you need to pay over lunch to Preet, you send them a bank payment, and every time you do that bank payment, you're basically effectively signing that bank payment with a qualified electronic signature. That's how popular and how widespread those methods are in Estonia, and how low the cost is for these methods. If you would want to do a qualified electronic signature, for example, in Germany, that would cost you 1.5 to 3 euros. So that lunch would significantly increase in price for you. So we want to make sure that the adoption is there by plugging into existing methods and popularizing it by lowering the friction of onboarding. So we usually prefer methods that are already popular, that have already widespread adoption, and that's where also the easiness comes in. So it's not just the technical easiness of integration, but it's also making sure that we take each local champion that already exists in Europe and outside of Europe and plug those methods into our platform. And at the end of the day, we know that from the end customer, anything that adds friction to the process is an opportunity for them to stop the onboarding. It's an opportunity for them to not sign the contract. So that's why we prefer methods that are popular, everyone is already using, versus adopting something like DocuSign started doing with the whole new flow of taking out your document and doing the face scanning every time you need to sign a document. That's not going to bring scalability because it just creates such a big friction that you're going to use it for the multi-million euro contract. And then here I also want to bring a little bit to discussion that Axel was talking about, which is trust. So what we did at our company is that we mapped out there was some studies done on the level of trust in different societies. And then you look at the map of Europe, and surprise, surprise, the Nordic countries, there's a big level of trust between people. And I think it was on the previous talk, we were also saying that in Sweden, qualified electronic signatures don't have adoption, and they actually have some methods. There are some QTSPs in Sweden that can provide solutions for them, but everyone is using bank ID, and for them that is enough. And the reality is that because the trust level inside Sweden is so high, I could potentially conclude a multi-million euro contract with a handshake or with an oral agreement. Perhaps not an oral agreement, as we heard before, that the lawyers don't like that. But the level of trust is so big that you don't need that type of signature. But as soon as you go to other countries where the level of trust is not so big, then you need to know that you're doing business with the right person and that the signature you're doing is undisputable and that you have that backing, number one. Number two, as soon as you do cross-border, you're dealing with more unknowns. The risk factor comes into play, and you want to make sure that the agreements you're signing have the level of validity that constitute the qualified electronic signature. And I think on the cross-border aspect is where we see a lot of opportunities for our technology, because we allow the end user at the moment of signing to choose the method that they want to choose. Just like nowadays, if you go to pay for something in your online shop, you have a multitude of options for your bank. We want to be the same thing for qualified electronic signatures. You just, from a drop-down, choose your country, choose which method you want to sign with, and most likely that's a method you already have in your pocket or you already have in your computer.
But how do you go about when you enter a new country? So let's say you ask for a specific country to be integrated into your solution. What actual practical steps do you take? You mentioned you need a local champion or
yes.
Provider. How do you identify them? How do you find them?
So I think that's something that for all its evils that the EU has, it has done one thing well. It has a clearly established rules about who is a qualified trust service provider and who is not. And within the qualified trust service providers, who is able to do the qualified timestamping, like Guardtime here, or SK that we are using currently, or the ones that are approved to do the qualified signatures. There's a list. We check on the list. We see what is the market adoption of each of the players. Some countries have 3 or 4. Other countries, such as Spain, have more than 20. So if there's a country with more than 20, it's a little bit of a headache, but nothing that some research on the field won't solve. And then we find out what's the adoption curve for these ones. Usually there's always a state player in the form of ID cards, and there's a couple of private players, most likely in the form of mobile solutions. We knock on the right doors. We find out whether they have legal where they have API documentation that's ready accessible, and then with a few weeks of work, we get to integrate one more method into our application.
Let's make it more difficult. What do you do if you go outside of the European Union?
Yes, that's where things get interesting, right? So in Europe, I think having ADAS is very good, and it allows for that framework, and we have the list of providers. Outside of Europe, it gets a little bit more challenging. But just like Lever ID has found a way to do 69 countries. There are providers for qualified electronic signatures currently in Europe who are able to do the identification of their users using either the electronic IDs or their passport pictures and having the same onboarding for outside of Europe. Now we're talking of European players that fall within this framework but operate outside of Europe. Then you also have a lot of people in Middle East, South America, Southeast Asia looking at the ADAS framework and trying to copy the same steps, so they want to fall within that category. And the latest one that we are going to integrate is from Ukraine, which is using their own cryptographic standards, but they are looking into adopting the European standards to be able to qualify or to be able to be at least compatible with ADAS. So we're going to integrate with them, and I mean they face similar challenges to other countries that don't have the same standard or don't have the same level of compatibility with ADAS, but we help them in that sense, because we bring them into the platform, and then it makes it easy for them to do the proof case. Yeah.
Very easy. And
Very
when,
easily,
when you
yes.
refer to lever ID, I don't know whether you said it or I overheard, but it sounded like clever ID. So I thought that's lever ID is very clever. Yes,
we should join forces and then be clever and easy.
Yes, I signed up. Yes, that's great. And Sirli, I will come to you now, but I just wanted to an intro and to Estonia. And I hope that we have from my understanding, one of the wishes of ITVA, of the International Trade and Trading Association, for this event and for bringing it to Estonia was to really showcase the great technologies and these groundbreaking technologies that Estonia has to offer. So I'm just looking at Sean here, and he's nodding. Yes, so he's happy. So that's great. And we have Estonian companies present here. And earlier, Oscar was also, with the help of his colleagues Jim and Sean, very nicely making lots of points about lever ID. But in terms of, if you look at Estonia, Sirli, what has Estonia done as a government to create this environment in terms of legislation and the business environment to enable so many great technologies to be sprung as, I don't know, it's like a mushrooms that have sprung and all of them are available. So what is, maybe paraphrase the question of Sean to Uwe, what is the secret sauce of Estonia?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm thinking now from a wider perspective than from governmental side. I think we have really boost innovation in private sector with different innovation programs. For example, like Accelerate Estonia has been. But from real-time economy perspective, we are trying to boost the usage of different real-time economy solutions. As Toomas mentioned in the beginning, the standards, then for me also, or for the real-time economy as well, we are also seeing that we need to be pretty much neutral for the technology or technological standards, but we need to agree on the semantics. So if talking about challenges and from the governmental side, then I see that we as public sector need to cooperate with private sector to agree on the best semantic standards and to have them cross-border to be exchanged or to be similar. I also wanted to bring out here that all these documents moving in supply chain. Also, Toomas mentioned different documents, and there are also different standards there. I think it's very important from real-time economy perspective that these data fields or semantics used in, for example, in e-invoicing or in e-orders needs to be also unified. So we can have semantic standards on different data sets, but we also need to unify the same data fields there. And all in all, I see that this all ends in the reporting to the state. So the last communication with about the transaction, and to make this endpoint very easy, we need to have the first building blocks like e-invoicing and e-orders and other supply chain documents and data standardized to make this reporting to the state very, very easy for our entrepreneurs. And for that, I would like to bring out here that in Estonia we have taken this data-driven reporting really one important objective to 2025 to get this new way of reporting only data, not reports from entrepreneurs. And from that side, we are working in parallel. So we are working together with public and private sector. We need to get both sides technologically on the same level, because if our public sectors are able to receive and process data automatically and all on the highest level of technology, but if the entrepreneurs are not able to submit their data in the same way, then it's a big problem. So from the government side, to take this, to boost this data-driven reporting, we are also working on different support measures. Yes, for the data-driven reporting, the support measures are planned 2024 and from to 2025. But today we are supporting these building blocks to be taken into use and to boost them, like e-invoices and also from transport logistics sector, these e-way bills, which also consist a lot of information about the transaction data. So we are coming from building blocks to the end of the communication with the state and try to standardize the semantics in that data supply chain as well.
Sirli, how big is your army of developers in the government? So how many people do you employ actually to do all this development? Because yesterday you also mentioned that you fail and you just move on and you try something new. But or do you have employed developers within the government, or do you usually cooperate with private sector and outsource companies to work on these technologies?
Yes. At first, I would like to say that fortunately, we have not failed yet. So hopefully, we will just learn from the process and be able to learn quickly and not fail. But yeah, how big is the team? I would say very big, because for me, our team is everyone that is motivated to bring real-time economy really alive. So talking about it, willing to make developments towards it. They are all team. And also, when going more concrete, we have great connections in both public and private sector. Around 10 public sector agencies are working with us in different fields for data-driven reporting, but also private sector companies, mostly software and service providers, are working with us because they are having the biggest amount of clients who will be the end users. But for the end users, we need to communicate the new services in better way, but the support and the boost needs to go to most probably to the service and software providers in between to get this usage really up and going.
Good. I have one more question for you, but before that, we also have questions from the audience. Those in the room here and also online, please send more questions if you want, but I think maybe now it's the time to look at the word cloud, if we have any. Do we have a word cloud? Oh, yes, we have. So we got... Thank you for using the technology. We have more words than yesterday. So let's see. So what I would ask you, and Sirli, just to double check that you can also see that. Can you see the word cloud?
Yes.
Good. So I will ask you in any order to pick one that speaks to you and to tell us what do you think about it and how you tackle it in your daily work with the products that you have.
Should I start?
Yes, Sirli, please do.
Okay. So I picked the legal part. For us, it's very important that the legal or let's say the business environment is good and efficient, meaning that we can only support it by making these regulations and legal amendments to be supportive towards businesses. So this is our goal. For example, our next step, let's say in e-receipts, is that we should not have the obligation. We should not make it mandatory for our shoppers to give out paper receipts, and the first option should be definitely electronic one. But this amendment needs to be done during this or next year.
To do the electronic receipts, you need to collect extra data, and some people may not be willing to give out their personal information at the point of sale to receive the electronic receipt. How do you think that this could be solved?
E-receipt standard, European e-receipt standard is actually being developed as we speak. It should be out next year, hopefully in the first part. They are discussing also how this service should look like, but they are more focused on the semantics of the receipt. From the service model side, we from Ministry of Economic Affairs and together with Ernst & Young, we conducted research, and we have there some good alternatives to keep this buyer anonymous, meaning that yes, we can have some kind of ID code there, but there's no name or any other personal information behind it. There's only ID, which links to wherever this person wants their receipt to be sent, an app or something else.
Okay, good. So Toomas, I come to you next.
Okay, I selected the standardization, and so there's a lot of talk about standardization of messages or electronic documents. Yes, it's very important, it's mandatory, but it's not the only one. Next one, actually, what is not so much in focus is, for example, communication channels. Example here, in Estonia, here is approximately, 5 e-invoicing providers. Every provider have own communication standard. For ERP means that they should implement all 5 different communication methods, authorization methods, authentication methods. And at the end of the day, this means cost for end user and implementation cost. And also it produces some friction between switching, for example, from one service provider to another, because you should start implementation from scratch again. But what is not on the table at all is a business process standardization. And to be successful or to implement quickly and easily business process across supply chain, the business processes should be also standardized. Financing processes should be standardized and so. And if they are not, there will happen that there is a document message. One party understands one way, another party another way, and at the end of the day, the business process just don't work through the companies, through the supply chain. But more issues about integration. As I told, we have more than 1,000 machine-to-machine interfaces, plus roaming partners across Europe and even somewhere far away. And when we are receiving document and there is a receiver written, we should find somehow. It means that somewhere should be address book, address register, or directory service, how to find this another party. In Estonia, it's organized quite well. In business register, we have a directory, and there is every company describing who is a service provider, and it's very easy. We are making a call to our request to business register. We will know where is a receiver, and we can address this to this business unit. This is one dimension. Next dimension is that invoice usually is sent to company. But if the company is huge and he has a lot of business units, how to find right business unit? Because if I am sending this to Tallinn headquarters, but the target was Riga office, it can happen that the invoice will be lost. And there is actually addressing standard used in logistics. It's maintained by GS1, Standardization Organization. It's named TLN, Global Location Number. But not all companies are willing to use it, and this GLN number is mainly used in trade sector, but not in other sectors. We have users in fintech side around the world, and it's quite complicated how to identify receiver, because in some countries there is registration number, in some countries are IBAN codes, in USA something different, in Australia, Singapore, I don't know where, the practice can be very different, and it's still quite complicated. And for example, when we are getting invoice from Google, who was the issuer of invoice, it's quite hard to recognize automatically. This is this addressing area, and when I participated in European Standardization Organization and we told about the invoicing standards in Europe, the addressing was something what was postponed for later discussion because it's so complicated. And also something what is not related to standard directly, but what is important in supply chain integration, and this is data quality. It's very easy to make business process or software to run when the data is correct. But if the incoming data is crap, and in ERP systems in companies, it happened quite frequently that the master data is crappy. And it's very hard to build a business process based on crap data. In quality management, there is a classification for reasons or sources of failure. If something went wrong, what are the reasons? It's named Ishikawa. Ishikawa was an engineer in Kawasaki factory shipyard, and he classified sources of failures in 5 classes. It can be raw material. This is data. For us, it's data. Incoming data, for us, it's truth. I don't know it's wrong or right. The next is a working process. What can fail? There can be environment. There can be skills, and there can, the people skills, or there can be tools. For us it means software and hardware failure. Environment for us is internet actually. And in our practice also, if we have a failure, usually the problem for us is raw material. Incoming data is crap.
That's a good note on which I will ask Joao to pick one word, or if there are two together.
No, I was going to say that I'm going to cheat. I'm going to pick two words. I was very, very willing to pick challenge authority, just because that's in my nature, and it's right next to each other. But I'll go bigger and I'll say challenge everything. And why I pick this is that the game we're playing with EID Easy is to try to be an aggregator of all the methods that are out there and play within the rules of the ADAS framework. And ADAS is a few years old. ADAS 2 is coming out anytime soon. But as we were talking, and I think that the challenge everything was a little bit from Mairi's talk about, you need to challenge also the way that which documents are being produced, why are they being produced, why do they need, this type of process or not, right? But I think for me, the most important part is that if you look at the current implementation and you look on the ground how people are doing the cross-border and the signatures, then you still see that, not even talking from Portugal, where I'm from, where everyone has a chip in their ID card, most people never use it to sign a document. Even just looking at cross-border business between Estonia and Finland, which are neighboring countries, you can have someone sign a document here with their Estonian ID card and have it on the other side in Finland. People are questioning, what is this, right? So there's a lot of obstacles on the way. This is one of the things that I'm motivated about with EIDs and why we want to do this, is to make sure that we bring some of this trust back into the post-pandemic world, where more and more businesses are going to be conducted online, where people don't have anymore the wet signature on a piece of paper, and where we definitely want to see the cross-border qualified electronic signatures be adopted. So if we have these types of issues between Estonia and Finland, or let's say Sweden, as we were talking before, where QES is not widely adopted, then imagine bringing a solution like this to the world. Imagine bringing a solution where more and more people are using their ID cards or whatever electronic ID methods they have to sign documents. So it is a big challenge, and that's, I think, one of the reasons that motivates me to be doing this with EID Easy.
Very good. And I will have a question for you, just to remind the people to use, those who, especially who are online, because in the audience I will be able to see if there are any questions. Please do raise questions, and Joao, be prepared. There is a question for you.
Okay.
But I will come back to you. Axel, what is your word?
I'm also cheating, actually. I'm choosing two of them. I'm choosing adoption and scalability. Well, you know that when you are using a slow Wi-Fi, you may go crazy. And that's something that is very important when you are doing business. For example, at Guardtime, we are ensuring that data integrity will be preserved for your business. But we would not do so if it would be slow for your business, right? So scalability is one of the main issues. And at Guardtime, initially we took some distances with public blockchains because it's one of the issues, Bitcoin is validating 3 transactions per second, Ethereum is validating 10 transactions per second, and we see that very few businesses are actually implementing their business on top of these public blockchains. And that's why KSI blockchain was a very innovative technology. And because we are actually providing data integrity at scale.
Okay. On the blockchain, just to say that someone, most probably who was online, when I was doing the experiment of raising hands, they wrote they have no experience with blockchain. So at least, apart from those in the audience, there is at least one person online who hasn't experienced it. But Joao, I have a question for you. What happens if users are from different countries and use different signing technologies and with a different quality level?
Right. So I mean, this is the reason why we exist, right? So this is the type of solution that we're bringing to the market is the compatibility. It exists on a legal framework. So again, if you are signing a document with an Estonian ID card, it is legally valid in any court of law within the European Union, within the EIDAS countries. But in practice, it many times happens that if you sign something with an Estonian ID card and someone else signs something with another qualified method, it might break the signature. It might invalidate the previous signatures. This happens a lot with advanced and simple signatures. So if you're using a simple signature with a document portal that happens to add an audit trail, that audit trail many times invalidates the previous signatures because it modifies the original PDF. That's no good. So we act also as a consultant to the document signing portals on how to properly implement the qualified and advanced signatures so that they do not break the previous signatures that were there, therefore ensuring the compatibility if someone is signing with the Austrian method, handy signature, or someone is signing with the Portuguese method that they have on their phone. That makes it for the cross-compatibility to exist. That's one. The second thing that we enable is that within the same document, you can have a qualified signature, an advanced signature, and even a simple signature, and they will not break each other. And therefore, you can have a three-party business happening between, let's say, Finland, the United Kingdom, and somewhere in Spain, and each of them will be using a different method, perhaps a different also level of signature, and the same document will be valid. If you open it in Adobe, it will show us all the signatures are valid and the different levels. If you take it to a different signature portal, they will be able to recognize the previous signature. So this is one of the problems that we're solving, and we see this as one of the cases why the portals are using our technology is specifically for that question. Different countries, different methods, and different levels of signature, and how to make sure that they are compatible.
Okay. Just to check, are there any questions? I do have a question for Sirli. So that's a cue to Sirli to be prepared, but are there any questions in the audience? No? Yes, a gentleman from Clever ID. Clever ID. Oscar, do you have a question? Well, just a moment. Let us bring the microphone to you so we can hear it.
So people in the live stream can
also
hear.
Yes, that they can hear you.
So I have a fun question. What's more important, trust or proof?
Oh, that's a good question. Who is that question for? The audience?
For everyone.
Truth.
But you asked trust or?
Proof.
Proof.
Proof. Proof.
Proof. P-R-O-O-F.
Yeah, and
proof.
I'm answering truth.
You're asking truth.
Truth.
Okay.
Yeah,
truth.
right.
Yes.
You're cheating again. That's good.
Toomas, what do you think?
For everything starts from trust.
Trust.
Yeah,
And Joao?
trust,
I think proof is important. I definitely think that at the end of the day, when things go bad, you need proof. So that's the important thing. However, in the everyday world, in the everyday business, for transactions to operate, for businesses to keep running, then I think trust is definitely the most important thing. And for trust to happen, you don't necessarily need to have the highest proof level. And like I was mentioning, if you look at different societies and the trust level between them, you can have a multi-million euro deal signed with a handshake, and that is fine. When you go global, when you need to do cross-border transactions, I think proof becomes slightly more important. But I agree with Toomas. It starts with trust, and you need to have trust in the system, trust in the different the different elements of the supply chain for business to operate. So I would go with trust as my final answer.
It was an elaborate but easy answer. Sirli, what is for you? Trust or proof?
Yeah, for me, I think also trust, because from real-time economy perspective, our first objective is not to make new solutions mandatory at first point. So hopefully never. So if we build trust, then people start to use them by their own will. So trust is very important in real-time economy as well.
Good, because it leads well to the question that I had for you. we had over these 2 days here in the audience, but also online, we had participants from over 30, and it's 30 countries. And some of them are not from the European Union, some of them are not en route to the European Union, which means they haven't yet started adopting different regulations. So as Estonia, as this beacon of digital society and real-time economy, Sirli, what would be your suggestions in terms of how can the participants who attended this event, how can they start thinking or innovating and motivating others on bringing the latest technologies? For example, we have some banks. Would it be sufficient for banks to start using these technologies in their daily business? And then do you think the government will keep up with them and will actually take this up? Or do you think that it's best to start with, so to say, policy dialogue and advocacy, and as Sean mentioned earlier, for example, to find the right person in the right place and introduce them to this technology so that they can implement the legislative base first for further implementation?
A lot of questions in one question. So I will start from the beginning. With your question, I reminded the fact that it's not always easy to take new technologies on board when you have pretty good ones already going. For example, I think the easiest example is that in e-invoicing for people, for citizens or small entrepreneurs, it's already quite easy to exchange PDFs. So why should I go over to e-invoicing? So it's for me, I see that it's quite hard if you have some technology or way of doing already so much taken into use. And I also see that it might be much easier to take new technologies on board or innovate and boost these innovations quicker when you don't have quite much innovation or technology in use. So it's easier to go from paper to e-invoicing than from PDFs to e-invoicing. It's just an example, a simple example, but I think it goes also the same way in using whatever technologies. The second thing I wanted to say about the policies or legislation part, I think some things should start from legal amendments and then go on to real cases. But Estonia case has quite always been the way that first you have the technology, the use cases, the services, and then the legal amendments come along. Yes, they should be quicker, but I really see the value of showing some quick wins and some good examples that do work. And then it's much more easier also to push the legal amendments both in public and private sector. So I hope I answered both
Yes,
questions.
it's good. What it basically means that we should take this panel and just do a road show. We go to every country. So those of you online, if you are interested to bring the best technologies, let us know. I'm sure with the help of the International Trade and Forfeiting Association, we can replicate this panel. Thomas wanted to make a comment about trade finance, but Joao, is this related to this?
Directly related to what Sirli was saying, that I also think it's a bit naive to think that it's all on the hands of government. that just simply by having this legal framework or by having the initiative of some government that things magically happen. Estonia benefits from the fact that it's a small country and perhaps the technology adoption curve is faster. But look at the ID cards and how people were using the chips on the ID cards to log in and to do signatures with ID cards. Finland has had it since the beginning. I mean, the Estonian looked at the Finnish government for inspiration, and yet you look at the adoption curve in Finland, and it's nowhere near what Estonia is doing, right? So I think the fact that in Estonia, the banks, the telcos started pushing, the adoption started coming from there, so these public-private partnerships were essential for that. So I think there's a lot of room for a government to play a role, but I think it needs to come from a push for where the solutions are coming. And I completely agree with Sirli said about if you don't have any technology yet, it's easier to adopt the latest possible thing. I saw it with my own eyes here in Estonia when I moved 15 years ago, and how the adoption of some of these technologies overlapped. I mean, I remember going to a bank, I went to Swedbank to try to cash in a bank check. And they looked at me like I was from some other planet because they had never seen a bank check because people were just not using that anymore. They just leapfrogged that. And I just came from a business trip now to Armenia and Uganda. And everyone is looking at what is the latest technology. And they will for sure leapfrog a lot of things that we're taking for granted here now. And we're maybe a little bit more skeptical on adopting the latest things. And back then, because they have the benefit of not having adopted the latest ones, they can jump in to whatever is the most accepted practice.
I cannot speak for Uganda, but we have Armenians in the audience, so they are
right.
leapfrogging already. They're already here ahead of maybe some other countries. Yes,
absolutely. And I'm happy to join the roadshow if you guys.
Very good. Toomas, you wanted to make a point for trade finance?
There is some trends or movements on our market what can influence trade finance also. In factoring panels, there was participants told that how to act or how to proceed credit notes. And credit notes are quite big problem for retailers, suppliers in supply chain because it produces a lot of work. But why credit notes? Credit notes are actually a result of delivery process failure. It's somewhere mistakes in process. And how to reduce this amount of failures is that now we are, what is under construction with some bigger retail chains in Baltics, that we are moving to a new delivery process, what's named 4-doc process. And what it means? It means that the delivery process is split into two steps. First step is goods delivery, starts from ordering, then dispatching, receiving goods. And when retailer or buyer accepts delivery, after that he sends out receiving advice, and based on receiving advice, supplier can issue invoice. And this invoice can be automatically verified matched against the receiving advice, and actually it can be approved automatically. This is one thing what we're working on. And next one, what is on the table, we are not yet implemented in Baltics, but in Europe some e-invoicing operators are doing is a business level response to invoice. It means that when receiver receives invoice, he will send out back to supplier status messages. What is the status of invoice? Is it accepted? Is it on the hold? Is it paid? Is it accepted? And it can be actually quite interesting solution, especially for financing world.
On this note, I just want to bring back that magical slide of Sean. I think we need to create an extra loop based on the latest technology from Estonia, where we can, we can match the order with the invoice. But are there any questions? Any more questions? The other Sean, the Sean of Estonia, do you have a question? No. So then, I guess on this note, yes, Axel?
I will come back on the question of Oscar.
because I made a joke, but I didn't actually answer the question. So I do believe that we are living in society which is very risk averse. And we also see that legal disputes are actually increasing. To me, trust in this current world is a bit naive. And with a proof, which can be mathematical truth, right? This will actually bring more trust. That's it.
And it will make it mathematical. Yes.
I do have a question as well.
Yes.
Where do you see the digital signing space in 5 years' time? Like, do you see wider adoption, or is it still going to be the foreplay of these innovative countries which are seeing this as a, let's say, opportune moment? Or is it going to be more widespread?
If I may, I mean, it's inevitable. I think that we're marching towards that at a very, very quick pace. We saw it ourselves with the beginning of the pandemic. Suddenly, hundreds of millions of businesses across the world were left with people working from home, not having an option to sign documents. DocuSign benefited massively from this, and a lot of clients rushed to DocuSign. So what we're seeing is that the growth of the digital signature market is increasing, and within that space, the share of that cake, the size of that slice of the pie that has to do with qualified and advanced signatures is growing bigger than is growing the fastest of all of that, which means that more and more people are signing documents electronically. And I think in 2022, as opposed to 2020, the market is maturing and understanding that there is a difference between a scribble on a PDF and actually signing something where you have proof of identity of who is behind this signature and who is signing that document. So more and more adoption of electronic signatures for sure, not just on the digital advanced countries. Again, I just came back from Africa and I saw how they are taking these technologies into adoption on the ground before you can even get, I just out of the airport wanted to get my data package with one of their telcos. And on the airport, I had to prove my identity and I had to sign something in front of the guy with the electronic signature to make sure that I could get my signature package, my data package. So the trend is there, and I think it's inevitable that we'll see more adoption of digital signatures. In 5 years, in 5 years, we see the growth now pretty much doubling on a yearly basis. So if it hasn't taken over the world in 5 years, it's merely because of a technological adoption problem, which I don't think is going to be the case for the types of businesses that we're talking about here.
Kasper gives a thumbs up. That's good. Thank you so much to my panelists, to Toomas and Sirli. Aita.
Pardon?
You're welcome.
Obrigada to Joao. And merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. And on this note, this concludes the content part of the event. And over to you, Peter.